Welcome to Street Signs. We are here in Burlington at Vermont Community Access Media, VCAM, doing a show we haven't been doing before, we haven't done before, and it's on the Alzheimer's Association, the Vermont chapter, a group that's located out in Williston, not too far from Taft Corners. And welcome aboard our guests, Jane and Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, tell us about your organization. Actually, tell us about yourselves.
So Kelly, you want to go first?
I'm Kelly Devine, and professionally I'm the Executive Director of the Burlington Business Association. I live here in Chittenden County with my two sons, and this year I am the chair of the Alzheimer's Walk for Chittenden County. So very involved and interested in the Alzheimer's cause. Been impacted personally. Both of my mother and father have Alzheimer's, and I'm really excited to help the group out to help make our walk this year an amazing fundraising event. It's a very important fundraising event for the work that the Alzheimer's Association does. So we're hoping to get the word out and get some people excited about joining us on Walk Day on September 16th.
Kelly, are you new with the organization?
This is my first year, yes, as chair of the walk, but I've been supportive of the work the association's done for several years. But this is my first official role.
Yeah. Now, Jane Mitchell, you are the development director of the local chapter Alzheimer's Association. You're also the interim executive director.
That's correct. I am managing both of those roles right now. I've been with the Alzheimer's Association for 4 years now. Came to it from another nonprofit in the community. I've been really motivated to work for the Alzheimer's Association because so many women are affected by Alzheimer's disease and dementia, either as a person living or diagnosed with the disease or as primary caregivers. And that was really my motivation, was to get involved because it's a women's health issue and a women's health crisis. But we are a small organization. We have 5 staff members and we cover the whole state. We depend on volunteers like Kelly, community educators, support group leaders who help to amplify our education and our programs and reach as many Vermonters as we can.
You used the word dementia. Can you explain the word for people who don't know? They may have heard the word, but maybe not too sure what exactly it means.
Sure. So dementia, think of dementia as a spectrum. It's a very large umbrella. And dementia, can be associated with cognitive decline. So the loss of cognitive or executive function in our brain. But so dementia is a very wide spectrum. Alzheimer's is the most prominent form of dementia, but there's many other forms. There's vascular dementia, Lewy body disease, even Parkinson's can have a dementia component. So dementia is a very broad term, and then we get specific with certain types of dementia.
Now, diseases that affect dementia don't necessarily affect the muscles, or do they?
Well, ultimately they can, because...
But not initially.
Not necessarily. So with dementia, when you start to lose your cognitive function, you're often losing the memory of how you do certain things, or behaviors might change. So initially, you're not necessarily going to lose muscle function, but when you are in late stage Alzheimer's, certainly your brain is forgetting how to move your muscles, and you forget how to do basic functions such as feed yourself, just as an example.
I'm thinking, like, for example, Lou Gehrig's disease. Would that be considered in that category?
No, Lou Gehrig's is not under dementia. There might be...
Right.
Yeah.
That's just considered neurological.
Yes,
disease.
It is a neurological disease, but it is a brain disease, but it's not necessarily going to have a dementia component.
Right. Now, you had mentioned Parkinson's. It seems as though that when we hear of someone getting older, if it's not Alzheimer's, or not Parkinson's, it's Alzheimer's, for a disease that someone gets involving dementia.
Well, you know, the thing is that people are living longer, And so as we're living much longer than we used to, there are certain diseases that we tend to see develop, or the symptoms present more as we get older. Alzheimer's, what we know of it, or other dementias, that they're actually manifesting themselves within our bodies 20, 30 years before we ever actually see symptoms. So one of the things that we do at the Alzheimer's Association is we really want to help promote brain health and how to have a brain healthy lifestyle. And so that could involve things like having a balanced diet. We definitely talk about a Mediterranean diet, making sure that you're getting adequate exercise. Don't smoke, because we know that smoking can have a correlation with cutting off oxygen to the brain, and so in the long run, helping to advance cognitive decline. So we look at things like if the basics of a heart healthy lifestyle also are the basics of a brain healthy lifestyle. So the more that we can do to stay healthy, the more we can do to reduce those symptoms and help to prevent them from exhibiting sooner.
Well, when you say a Mediterranean diet, does that necessarily mean people who live in that particular, people from the Mediterranean, are less likely to get Alzheimer's than other parts of the world? Mm-hmm. Does it hit certain climate areas or certain people from certain countries more than others?
That's a really interesting question, and the short answer to that is no. People all over the world are affected by Alzheimer's or dementias. We don't know specifically if there's certain areas of the world that are less prone to Alzheimer's than others, but just saying, the American diet, which tends to be very heavy with red meats and saturated fats and just a lot of additives, we find that if we can pare those down and have a healthier diet, that we can often help to have a healthier body and in turn have a healthier mind.
And Kelly, you said it affected both of your parents?
Yeah, both of my parents started showing symptoms of dementia in their late 60s. My dad died of a related complication at 74. My mother is now 74, and she's at mid-stage Alzheimer's. So yeah, I'm one of the unlucky ones. Both of my parents suffering from that disease.
What age do people usually get Alzheimer's?
Well, I'll refer to Jane, I'm the expert on that.
Typically, we see more people getting diagnosed with it, typically age 65 and older, but we do know that people are getting diagnosed at younger and younger ages. Why that's happening, we're still not sure at this point. Is it that maybe the baby boomer generation, we look for answers a lot sooner than maybe our parents' generation did? We tend to question authority, so we want to talk to our doctors and find out what's going on, what's changing. Is it better medical technology? That's part of it too. There's more tests for cognitive tests for dementia and Alzheimer's. So it's sort of a chicken and an egg of why are we seeing more cases diagnosed at an earlier stage.
Well, we hear all these things about what's going on in the climate with pollution, in the environment. I mean, is it possible there are factors in the environment which are affecting, or people just don't know?
Again, an excellent question, and it's one that we don't truly have an answer for that right now. And that's why the Alzheimer's Association, why we as a nonprofit invest so much money into research. We do a couple of things. One, we work closely with our state and federal representatives to talk about the importance of funding research, and especially on a federal level, getting the National Institutes of Health to invest more and more money each year into Alzheimer's research. But we as an organization, we also invest in a lot of the smaller studies to help them ramp up to where they can be picked up by the National Institute of Health. And so there's a lot of things that we just don't know about what are, is it environmental factors? We know there are genetic factors for why some people get Alzheimer's and why some don't, but things like environmental factors, diet, all of those things are things that we're looking into now to help find out if they are contributing to Alzheimer's and dementia.
Well, is Alzheimer's considered something new this past century, or was it something that you think it's been around for a while? They just didn't. I mean, only when they named it, that's when they knew what it was.
I'd say you're correct in the latter. Officially, the Alzheimer's Association came into being in the early 1980s. Up until then, they're
Just
really
the 80s. Okay.
Yes, it's pretty recent history. There's a couple of factors. One, people used to call it hardening of the arteries, or they had different names for it, or they would just say, "That's grandma, that's grandpa." They're getting forgetful. So that was part of it. Is it really people knew that there were changes going on, but they didn't know what they were. They just attributed it to old age. And then, of course, now that we are living longer, if you look at the turn of the century, we were, living to 50 was considered old age. Nowadays, old age is, people living into their, 90s.
But generally, it's unheard of for someone to get Alzheimer's in their 20s or 30s.
It's not unheard of.
It's happened.
It happens.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's a rarity, but it can happen.
Right. My great-grandmother, who came to the United States from Ireland when she was 23 years old, she started showing signs of dementia in the early 70s. When she was in her 70s, and she spent almost 20 years in a nursing care facility with increasing dementia of some sort. Back then, we didn't really even have the term to diagnose it as Alzheimer's either. So, I witnessed that as a very young child, my grandmother being in a facility and really having, almost no skills to speak, not really a memory, but back then, they didn't really have a name for it.
Well, I guess more and more medication is being used to treat forms of dementia, isn't it?
Yes, there are a variety of prescription medications that can be used to treat Alzheimer's or dementia, but there's actually truly no fully effective treatments. There's no preventative treatments, and frankly, there's no cure. So if somebody is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, that's a fatal diagnosis. That is there's no changing that. What we can do is look at how research can find drugs that can help to alleviate or reduce the advancement of symptoms. And we can look to research to help us one day find that cure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So specifically, what does the Vermont chapter of the Alzheimer's Association do here in Vermont? And how does it work with the national chapter?
Well, one thing that's important is the fundraising that goes on at every level, and we're so fortunate here in Vermont. People are very generous. I know many, many people that have been impacted by this disease that are here in Vermont, and so every state in the country and around places around the world have to contribute to the fundraising cause because of the important work that Jane mentioned about trying to search for a cure. We call it the Walk to End Alzheimer's because we are looking for a way to find a cure to this disease. And the numbers, which Jane can quote, are staggering as to how this disease is going to escalate in terms of the healthcare costs just in the next decade alone. It really is a healthcare crisis, and it's sort of a little bit hidden in the shadows, and because people get put into institutions, they sort of get removed from society, and so we try to draw awareness not only to that, but also through our fundraising and our work in support of the mission of Alzheimer's, help raise some money so that we can help nationally as an organization fund research so that we can find a cure to this disease.
Yeah, so you have events coming up in September?
We have the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is at Shelburne Museum. It's one of several walks that are done in the state of Vermont. I think they're all in the month of September. That's nationally, there are walks that happen all over the United States. So, if you're listening and you're not in Vermont that weekend, you can find a walk in another part of the state. You can find a walk in another state. They happen all over the country. And I think there are two amazing things about the Walk to End Alzheimer's, and I've been involved since the year after my dad died in 2013 was my first walk. And it was really the first time that I realized that I wasn't alone with this disease after having been helping and coping with my father's Alzheimer's since about 2007. That was the first time that I really realized how many other people out there are impacted. It was also really important for me to help raise money for the cure. So I think the thing about the walk that I like so much among the many different events that the Alzheimer's Association does is that sense of community around caregivers and people that are suffering with the disease and people that have lost loved ones, as well as knowing you're helping to fund a cure. And at the Alzheimer's walk, we have different colored flowers you can use to designate your connection with the disease, and there are 4 colors, right?
There are 4.
Yeah, so I have 3, and I'm really hoping I don't have to pick up the 4th one, because the 4th color is the color you pick up if you are suffering with Alzheimer's.
Oh, okay.
But I qualify for every other color flower.
Right.
So where can they find out more information? By phone or your website?
So certainly we have our website for the Walk to End Alzheimer's is alz.org/walk, and you can find any of the 600 plus walks anywhere in the country. So if you live here in Chittenden County and you go to this walk, but you have family in, let's say, Los Angeles or Atlanta or Portland, Oregon, you can tell them about the walks in their community, and they can go walk there as well.
Yeah. Now, recently you just had an event which probably will repeat each year called The Longest Day.
Yes, so The Longest Day is our second signature event behind the Walk to End Alzheimer's. The Longest Day takes place in June. June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. And the Longest Day, most people know as the summer solstice.
Okay.
And for somebody who's living with Alzheimer's or their caregiver who's there with them, every day is the longest day. It truly is 365 days a year. So the longest day for the Alzheimer's Association is an opportunity to raise awareness and raise funds, and people create events around either a passion that they have, whether it's running the Vermont City Marathon, or they like to make purple pasta because that's what their mother used to make. But people create an event around this, invite people in, and people make donations. And it's an opportunity, again, to talk about Alzheimer's, talk about the impact on the family, and help other people to learn about what your family and friends have been going through.
Now,
This disease is unique in that the amount of care that's provided for people suffering with the disease by family members and friends, care that is not funded by our healthcare budget, is staggering in comparison to most other diseases, if not all other diseases nationwide. And so the Longest Day is a way to celebrate the fact that, that we as a country really are individually caring for folks in this condition, and it's sort of unseen from the health budgets, if you will, the many, many, many hours of care that's provided by loved ones for people with dementia.
So usually when someone gets Alzheimer's, they don't go into a hospital, they go into a nursing home or then a hospice? Is that what happens?
No, actually, it can be a variety. Well, so that can happen for some people. When you get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia, you could actually live with the disease for 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, I'm talking about a later stage. Because an uncle of mine passed away, and he ended up in a facility later on after he had it for a while. That's what I meant.
Well, it's a very personal decision by each family, depending on how the disease progresses within an individual. Some people can stay home and age in place and have their loved ones take care of them, or support systems can be put into place with whether it's the other service providers, VNA, or in-home care. And that works for some people. For some people, depending on the changes the disease makes on them, we hear we say if you've met one person with Alzheimer's, you've truly met one person with Alzheimer's. So one person, their mother, let's say, could have been a lovely, sweet, charming, gracious woman all of her life, and as she progresses with the disease, as she goes along, there might be changes in her personality based on the changes going on within her brain. And so, given that example, she might become argumentative, aggressive. There's a lot of different symptoms. There comes a time where in that particular family case, they may decide the best decision is a dementia care community where you have professional caregivers 24/7 taking care of your loved one. Other families may say, no, that's not the choice we want to make for our family. So it really depends on the family, depends on the person, how the disease is progressing, as to whether they go into a dementia care community or not.
Are there particular places around here that you want to mention, or is that not something you'd want to go into at this point?
Well, as the Alzheimer's Association, we can. There are lots of dementia care communities here. There's lots of elder care communities. We don't advocate for one over another.
Generally, these are businesses as opposed to nonprofit facilities.
Some are for-profit, some are nonprofit.
Okay.
There's a variety of them. Yeah.
The Alzheimer's Association website actually has good resources in helping people get connected to that care. So, if you are facing this as a family, it's a great resource with a lot of information there, and all the funding that's generated from the fundraising work that the Vermont chapter does and all the chapters do nationally help fund all of that information, which is a hugely valuable resource. The other thing I think it's important to mention too is if you go onto the Alzheimer's website, you can get signed up for clinical trials and information. So if you're impacted by the disease, or there's a history of disease in your family, or if you're just interested, there's a way for you to get involved in helping to build the base of information that's going to help us solve this disease.
Now, I've got a national 800 number, 1-800-272-3900. I believe the local phone number is 316-3839.
That's correct.
Right.
So the 800 number is a 24/7 helpline, and it's probably one of our greatest resources. And I'll be honest, we as a small chapter with 5 staff members, we could never man a 24/7 helpline. But because we're a national chapter, all the Alzheimer's Association chapters are part of the national organization. We all provide the 24/7 helpline. So if you have a question of any sort, whether you just want to know more about the disease, or in the case of, you were saying, asking the question about where are the dementia care communities, you can call the 800 number, ask for a care consultation, and you'll get a master level social worker that will guide you through any questions that you have, help you find the resources specific to your local community. And I stress the importance of this nationwide 24/7 helpline, because we're a very transient society now. It's not like 50, 60 years ago, where we grew up in a town, in a community, in a neighborhood, that we still had all of our siblings and our grandparents and our aunts and our uncles and neighbors that we'd known for generations, that we all helped each other out. We tend to, because we're transient, because we're a mobile society, I live here in Burlington, I have a sister in Los Angeles, I have another sister in Maine. If we had a family member, a parent who is in Florida, let's say, and one of us wanted to get information about resources available in Florida, we could call from any of our communities and say, my father, who has Alzheimer's, lives in, name a town, and I really want to find some support services for him because my mother's ill and she can't really take care of him the way she used to. And then they can help with that. But they can also answer questions for you about what kind of support groups or education programs are available in your community so that you can also learn more. And you're all getting the same information anywhere in the country.
Okay. We have 5 minutes left today on Street Signs, talking with Kelly Devine and Jane Mitchell from the Alzheimer's Association, Vermont chapter. And you were saying you have only 5 people at your location out in Williston, but you're in charge of recruiting volunteers for different events?
Well, I have to say that I'm a recruited volunteer,
Okay.
and it's been an amazing organization to work with. And so while I'm the chair of the walk, we have an amazing group of subcommittees that really are doing a tremendous amount of work for the walk. So we have a large pool of volunteers, always looking for more. If you want to volunteer and help.
Sponsors too?
We have sponsors. The presenting sponsor for this year's walk is People's United Bank. We need a lot of volunteers on event day, and
Yes,
it's
we do.
September 16th. You get into the Shelburne Museum for free for the day as a bonus, but if people want to help out that day, in addition to getting involved, walking, forming a team, you can be part of our team on the ground on the 16th to help with all the logistics and mechanics that come with putting this walk together. And how many people do we have on September 16th, roughly?
For volunteers?
No, walkers.
So we're hoping for between 2,000 and 2,200 walk participants on September 16th. We had 1,800 last year.
Okay.
Yeah, and it takes about 140, 150 volunteers day of to make that possible.
We form our own little village at Champlain, at Shelburne Museum, which is the little village.
Yeah.
I was just out there the other day.
Yeah, everybody that participates gets to enjoy the museum for the day. The walk is on the museum grounds. And if you care about this disease, if you are interested in it, even if you're not directly impacted in it, we need your help on September 16th.
Now, you've been getting a lot of publicity recently in Hometown, part of the Free Press's weekly supplement. There's also another event coming up in August, the 19th annual Basilar Golf Classic. Can either of you talk about that?
Sure, I can talk about that. So yes, the 19th annual Basilar Golf Classic is coming up. It was started by Dick Basilar, a former IBMer, and his grandchildren, so 3 generations now, have run this event, and it's taking place on August 4th at Cedar Knoll Country Club. And registration's currently open for registering as a single player or as a foursome. And in their 19 years, they've raised close to $100,000 for Alzheimer's care support and research. So it's a pretty amazing family and local golf classic.
Wow. Well, we're down to a minute left on Street Signs time. It's flown. That phone number again, 1-800-272-3900, or locally 316-3839. Website?
alz.org/Vermont. Or if you want to register for the walk, alz.org/walk.
Okay, Kelly Devine and Jane Mitchell, if you want to just add something quickly.
Just again, we need as many people as possible. We're hoping to meet or exceed our goal for our Walk to End Alzheimer's here in Chittenden County on September 16th. So please consider registering for a team, walking, or supporting someone financially who's walking with a donation.
And I'm going to second what Kelly's saying. It's really a powerful, it's a powerful day. You feel like you're part of something bigger, because many people who are caregivers for people living with Alzheimer's or who have the disease, it feels very isolating. You think nobody else knows what I'm going through. But you come out and you see 2,000 people around you and you realize I'm not alone. It is a sense of community, and it's a very uplifting day, and it's our biggest day of programs and education, so we really hope that the community will come out and support us at the Walk to End Alzheimer's.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Richard. We'll catch you later on Street Signs.